In a quiet, leafy suburb of Britain, life appeared perfect. Streets were lined with well-kept houses, gardens bursting with flowers, and the occasional family walking dogs or children cycling safely along the pavements. To the outside world, everything seemed orderly, safe, and predictable. Neighbors often commented on how these streets were a model of suburban tranquility, where everyone knew each other, and trouble never touched their doors. Among these families lived 5 women who, on the surface, seemed like any other mothers. Each had her own home, her own children, and her own carefully curated social life. They shopped at local stores, volunteered in school events, and were admired for their dedication to family and community. People would greet them with warm smiles, trusting them implicitly, never imagining that these women harbored a secret that would shock the nation. The 5 mothers were remarkably different in their personalities and backgrounds. One was the picture of sophistication, always perfectly dressed, her home immaculate and her children neatly groomed. Another was quieter, more reserved, blending into the crowd with ease, often seen carrying shopping bags and helping in the school library. A third mother had a reputation for charity work, frequently organizing bake sales drives and fundraising events. The fourth seemed almost invisible in her routine life, attending yoga classes, school meetings, and volunteering at the local community center. The fifth was dynamic, outspoken, and seemingly involved in everything that happened in the neighborhood. Despite their differences, one common trait bound them, all an ability to mask who they really were, and what they were capable of. Authorities first noticed something unusual when reports of class or drug activity in the town began to rise. But strangely, the incidents seemed to leave the suburban streets untouched. Cocaine, heroin, and other illegal substances moved with surprising efficiency through towns connected to this quiet suburb, but the epicenter never showed any signs of the chaos that usually accompanied such activity. Crime statistics indicated a surge in supply, yet local residents remained blissfully unaware. Police initially dismissed the area as coincidentally connected, assuming that the real dealers were elsewhere. No one could imagine that the ordinary faces of motherhood were at the heart of this underground network. Each of the 5 women had discovered a unique advantage. Society would never suspect mothers, especially those who appeared so devoted to their children, of involvement in the drug trade. Their roles as caretakers, volunteers, and friends provided the perfect cover. No one questioned their whereabouts during the day, the constant movement between schools, parks, and community events, or the countless packages they carried for school functions. To the public eye, their lives were entirely normal, and this normality became their most powerful weapon. Behind closed doors, however, the mothers were anything but ordinary. They were meticulous planners, always several steps ahead of anyone who might threaten their operation. Each household had been subtly adapted to facilitate secretive tasks without raising suspicion. Ordinary deliveries, charity packages, and even birthday party preparations became tools for their clandestine work. They communicated with one another through coded messages and encrypted channels, carefully planning routes, schedules, and contingencies. Their network was invisible, yet remarkably efficient, capable of transporting drugs across counties with a precision that rivaled professional criminal organizations. Neighbors admired their dedication to family and community, seeing nothing but helpful hands and smiling faces. What they didn't see were the hidden compartments in basements and attics, the intricate records kept behind false walls, or the digital footprints masked by advanced technology. Every school run, every charity meeting, every casual trip to the supermarket was carefully timed to avoid suspicion while keeping their underground network operational. The mothers had turned their domestic lives into a flawless disguise, transforming the ordinary rhythms of motherhood into the backbone of a criminal empire. It was a perfect balance of appearances and secrecy. The women's lives, filled with PTA meetings, soccer practices and school bake sales, offered an impenetrable shield. Law enforcement could not reconcile the image of devoted mothers with the evidence of drug trafficking that began to emerge elsewhere. The quiet suburb, once thought immune to the drug trade, had become the nerve center of an operation that stretched far beyond its boundaries. And yet, no one suspected that the smiling women carrying cupcakes and school books were the very people fueling a growing criminal empire, hidden in plain sight, under the guise of ordinary motherhood. The five mothers had not always known each other intimately. At first, their lives intersected only in fleeting ways, at school gates during PTA meetings or at local charity events. Each had her own social circle, her own responsibilities, and her own carefully maintained reputation. But necessity has a way of creating alliances in the most unexpected places. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the women began to form a network, not of friendship as the community understood it, but of strategy, coordination, and mutual advantage. They shared information cautiously at first, testing the waters, ensuring that no one could betray the other. Over time, their cooperation deepened, and the network became more sophisticated, more deliberate, more impossible to detect. Each woman brought her own strengths to the operation. One had a sharp eye for logistics, capable of planning delivery routes that avoided detection while ensuring timely movement across towns. Another had a talent for communication, crafting coded messages so clever that even seasoned criminals would struggle to interpret them. A third mother had an uncanny ability to blend in, observing law enforcement patterns and predicting patrol schedules with alarming accuracy. The fourth provided the financial expertise, tracking transactions, laundering profits through legal avenues, and keeping meticulous digital records. The fifth was a master of improvisation, able to adapt instantly to threats, disruptions, or rival interference. Together, they created a system that operated like a machine, precise, efficient, and almost impossible to trace. The network was hidden in plain sight. Packages disguised as ordinary grocery deliveries traveled seamlessly from one household to another. What looked like school fundraising items or gifts for birthday parties often contained hidden compartments filled with cash or contraband. Charity events became fronts, providing both cover and a steady flow of information. Even the postal service unwittingly assisted in the operation, as envelopes, parcels, and boxes moved undisturbed, passing through the hands of unsuspecting workers. Their attention to detail ensured that the operation left no obvious trails, no fingerprints, and no patterns that could immediately arouse suspicion. Technology became their invisible ally. Encrypted apps, anonymous accounts, and virtual communication channels allowed them to coordinate movements, schedule pickups, and manage finances without ever appearing to communicate directly. Even casual texts contained layers of hidden meaning. They had mastered the art of digital camouflage, ensuring that every step was protected, every message disguised. Law enforcement, accustomed to conventional tactics and known patterns of criminal activity, was unaware of the scale and sophistication of what was happening right under their noses. Every action was meticulously timed. The women synchronized school runs, playdates, and grocery trips with deliveries and pickups. Children's activities were integrated into their schedules not just for appearances, but as part of the operational flow. Neighbors saw only the ordinary, mothers helping with homework, baking cakes, organizing events, and driving children to activities. In reality, these routines were part of a complex choreography, designed to maintain the illusion of normalcy while managing an illegal empire. Their suburban homes became centers of hidden activity. Basements and attics, once storage spaces for holiday decorations and old furniture, were converted into secure locations for storage. False walls, locked compartments, and hidden safes protected the network's assets. Even mundane household chores and errands were strategically employed to reinforce the cover story. Every detail mattered, and every misstep could be catastrophic. The five mothers had turned domestic life into a tool of deception, using society's assumptions about women, motherhood, and domesticity as an impenetrable shield. Despite the outward calm, the stakes were constantly rising. Rival criminals began to notice delays and unexplained deficiency in the supply chain. Suspicion started to creep into the network surrounding them. Yet the mothers remained composed. their discipline and foresight ensuring that the operation continued with minimal disruption. They had become experts not only at concealment but at survival, adapting strategies in real time to counter new threats. Their suburban idyll masked an underground empire, invisible to neighbors, law enforcement, and even the wider criminal underworld. In the end, their power lay in the very ordinariness that made them invisible. No one questioned the mothers, no one suspected their coordination, and no one imagined that the smiling women organizing school events were the architects of a sprawling, secretive criminal network. What appeared to be suburban routine was in fact a carefully engineered machine for managing the movement of Class A drugs. The quiet streets, the volunteer work, and the cheerful presence of these mothers were all part of the facade, hiding a world of careful planning, high risk, and extraordinary cunning that allowed their empire to thrive undetected. The mother's operation had run like a well-oiled machine for months, seemingly untouchable. Every delivery arrived on time, every transaction was flawless, and no law enforcement officer or rival criminal had yet discovered their true roles. But even the most carefully constructed systems are vulnerable to cracks, and for the 5 women, that first crack appeared unexpectedly. It began with a single missing package. A shipment intended for a distant town never reached its destination, vanishing without a trace. The loss was small compared to the empire they had built, yet it set off a ripple of consequences. Questions were asked by clients and intermediaries alike. In the criminal underworld, even minor lapses can erode trust quickly, and trust is currency in a world where loyalty is bought with fear and respect. The mothers, initially confident that their meticulous planning had made them untouchable, suddenly felt the weight of vulnerability. Pressure mounted in ways they hadn't anticipated. One of the women, normally composed and meticulous, began making errors. Small mistakes, like forgetting to encrypt a message properly, or leaving a phone unattended in a public space, introduced risks that had previously been unthinkable. A rival gang member glimpsed one of these errors, seeing messages he could not fully interpret, but enough to stir suspicion. Slowly, the network's perfect invisibility began to erode. In response, the mothers acted quickly. They were not reckless, they were strategic, and survival depended on immediate adaptation. Decoy packages were created to confuse rival gangs. False leads were planted to misdirect anyone who might be investigating. Fake identities and altered schedules ensured that no one could trace their movements. The women understood that a single misstep could unravel months of careful planning, exposing both their empire and their families to unimaginable danger. Even as they reinforced their systems, tension within the group grew. The stress of maintaining secrecy under increasing scrutiny created fractures in their otherwise synchronized coordination. Arguments, though silent and private, simmered beneath the surface, threatening to disrupt the delicate balance of trust that had held the network together. Every decision carried extraordinary stakes. A wrong route, a poorly concealed package, or an overlooked message could result in arrest, betrayal, or violent retaliation. The criminal world itself grew restless. Rival gangs, frustrated by inefficiencies or delays, began probing for weaknesses. Law enforcement, though still unaware of the mother's involvement, started noticing unusual patterns. Transactions too sophisticated to be random, routes that defied typical distribution logic, and financial movements that seemed impossible to reconcile with ordinary suburban life. It was only a matter of time before someone connected the dots. Despite these pressures, the mothers displayed remarkable ingenuity. They began rotating responsibilities to reduce the chance of error, using new communication methods and switching safe houses. Everyday routines were recalibrated, blending ordinary tasks with covert operations in ways that made detection even more difficult. The women had honed the art of deception, mastering the delicate balance between outward normality and hidden criminal sophistication. Their suburban lives became a stage, their children unwitting props in a performance designed to deflect suspicion, while their empire continued to grow. The first real cracks, however, left a lingering question: could they maintain control under mounting scrutiny? The stakes had never been higher. Every movement, every message, every delivery was now weighed against the possibility of exposure. Even a single misjudgment could unravel the network entirely. The mothers had built a system of precision, but they had underestimated the unpredictability of human error and external threats. By the end of this phase, one truth became undeniable: the perfect suburban facade was fragile. It could shield them only for so long, and their greatest challenge was no longer the logistics of moving drugs. It was surviving the pressures of suspicion, human error, and the increasing scrutiny of both rivals and authorities. Every step forward required more cunning, more planning, and more daring than ever before. The stakes had shifted from operational success to survival, and the mothers were now playing a dangerous game that could destroy everything they had built in a single miscalculated move. The investigation into the quiet suburb began slowly, almost imperceptibly, as detectives noticed patterns that didn't fit the usual criminal profile. Initially, the reports seemed fragmented: unexplained deliveries, financial inconsistencies, and rumors of unusual activity in areas thought to be immune from the drug trade. No one could imagine that the source of these anomalies was not a gang of hardened criminals, but 5 seemingly ordinary mothers, whose days were filled with school runs, charity work, and family responsibilities. Detectives started by tracking the flow of drugs across the country, following shipment patterns and payment trails. The numbers were staggering. Kilograms of Class A drugs were moving efficiently and consistently from town to town, yet the typical chaos that accompanied such operations was absent. Surveillance footage showed nothing suspicious: mothers walking children to school, shopping trips, coffee dates, and volunteer events. At first, investigators assumed they had stumbled upon an unusually careful network of criminals operating out of plain sight, never suspecting that the masterminds were living next door, blending seamlessly into the suburban fabric. As the investigation deepened, authorities began noticing subtle anomalies: small discrepancies in delivery timings, patterns in financial records, and coincidental presence of certain individuals at multiple drop points raised questions. Analysts began to cross-reference public data with intelligence from rival gangs, and slowly, the outlines of a network began to emerge. The sophistication of the operation shocked even the most experienced officers. Everything pointed to meticulous planning, technological expertise, and an extraordinary understanding of human assumptions and behavior. The mothers had transformed their homes into hubs of hidden activity. Basements, attics, and spare rooms contained cleverly concealed storage areas, equipped with locks, safes, and hidden compartments. Everyday items, children's toys, household appliances, charity goods, were used to disguise storage and transportation. Each home was a small fortress, blending domestic normality with criminal ingenuity. The investigators were struck not only by the audacity of the operation, but by the precision with which it was executed. It was as if the suburban lifestyle itself had been weaponized to shield illegal activity. Digital evidence proved even more alarming. Encrypted messages, anonymized accounts, and virtual networks allowed the mothers to coordinate effortlessly, without leaving any direct trace. Their communication was coded in plain sight, hiding in casual texts, social media updates, and even routine emails. Analysts discovered that the women had anticipated surveillance, understanding how law enforcement monitored suspects, and manipulating patterns to avoid detection. The realization that 5 mothers could outsmart a professional investigation team sent shockwaves through the department. The psychological aspect of the case became a focus. The mothers had exploited society's assumptions about women, motherhood, and domesticity. No one expected them to be involved in criminal activity, and they had leveraged this expectation brilliantly. Their public lives, school projects, bake sales, charity drives, and family events acted as both alibi and camouflage, allowing them to operate with impunity, while the rest of the world remained unaware. The investigators marveled at the combination of cunning, discipline, and audacity. As the team dug deeper, the pressure on the mothers increased. Rival gangs were still probing, law enforcement attention was intensifying, and the smallest error could trigger exposure. The women had been untouchable, but the cracks were widening. Investigators were closing in, tracing financial flows, surveillance footage, and patterns in communications. What had once seemed invisible was beginning to take shape under the analytical lens of dedicated detectives. By the time the investigation reached a critical point, it became clear that the mothers were not only skilled at concealment. They were strategic, fearless, and extraordinarily disciplined. Their suburban facades hid a level of criminal sophistication few had imagined possible. Every action, every routine, and every carefully timed gesture was part of a larger puzzle. The detectives realized they were no longer chasing ordinary criminals. They were up against masterminds who had transformed domestic life into an impenetrable shield. The final challenge was imminent: capturing the women without warning them, without giving them a chance to dismantle their network or disappear into the unassuming streets they had long dominated. The end of the mother's carefully constructed empire began quietly, almost imperceptibly, with a single tip from a rival gang member. Jealous, frustrated, and fearful of losing territory, he had noticed patterns that even seasoned criminals had overlooked. The information he provided was enough for law enforcement to coordinate a series of strategic raids across the quiet suburb. What followed would become one of the most astonishing criminal takedowns in recent British history. The mothers had lived for months under the assumption that their suburban camouflage was impenetrable. Their homes, meticulously maintained, had hidden compartments, storage rooms, and safe spaces where large quantities of Class A drugs were kept. Digital communication, financial management, and logistical coordination had all been executed with extraordinary precision. But even the most disciplined systems cannot withstand the combination of internal pressure and external scrutiny indefinitely. As the raids unfolded, the women were arrested in a coordinated sweep that caught them completely off guard. The discovery shocked the community. Neighbors who had exchanged smiles and polite greetings for years could not comprehend the reality. Basements revealed hidden caches of cocaine, heroin, and ecstasy. Attics contained false compartments storing encrypted devices, cash, and ledgers detailing intricate transactions. Even everyday household items, children's toys, charity donations, and party supplies had been used as ingenious methods for moving contraband without raising suspicion. Investigators were stunned by the level of sophistication, as well as by the audacity of mothers who had manipulated assumptions about domestic life so completely. In court, the mothers' stories fascinated and horrified the public. Journalists, law enforcement officials, and criminologists alike struggled to understand how 5 women, living what appeared to be ordinary suburban lives, could operate a criminal network capable of supplying major cities with Class A drugs. Evidence showed that the operation had moved millions of pounds worth of narcotics across Britain, all while maintaining the illusion of ordinary motherhood. Bake sales, school runs, and volunteer work had been integral to the network's success, providing both cover and a method for information exchange that went unnoticed for months. The trial revealed more than just logistical brilliance. It exposed psychological manipulation on an extraordinary scale. The mothers had exploited every assumption society makes about women, parenting, and domesticity. They had weaponized the perception of normality to avoid suspicion, creating a reality in which criminal activity could flourish beneath the veneer of suburban virtue. Experts noted that few criminal organizations operate with such a combination of patience, foresight, and audacity. Their ability to manage both domestic responsibilities and a high-stakes criminal enterprise was unprecedented. Sentences were long and decisive. The 5 mothers were removed from the lives of their families and communities, their freedom replaced by the stark confines of prison walls. For the residents of the town, the shock was profound. People had lived for years alongside the women, trusting in their apparent decency, unaware that the smiling faces at school gates and charity events were hiding a criminal empire. The community reeled from the revelation, and questions about trust, perception, and the unpredictability of human behavior dominated local discourse for months. Yet the case also served as a cautionary tale. It revealed the vulnerabilities in assumptions about safety, appearances, and ordinary life. Law enforcement agencies revised procedures, financial institutions strengthened monitoring, and communities began to recognize that criminal ingenuity could be hidden in the most familiar of places. The story of Britain's 5 mothers became a national sensation, capturing attention for its combination of audacity, cunning, and betrayal of societal trust. Ultimately, the downfall of the mothers underscored a chilling truth: appearances can be dangerously deceptive. Even in the most peaceful neighborhoods, the ordinary can conceal the extraordinary. While the empire they had built was dismantled, its legacy remained. A stark reminder that normalcy can be a mask, and that the most unexpected individuals can operate with both brilliance and ruthlessness. Britain's quiet suburbs would never be seen in the same way again, forever haunted by the knowledge that 5 mothers had secretly fueled the class drug trade with a cunning that no one could have anticipated.